This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, May 22nd, 2023. Case file number 1113, written by Fawwal. The Bird.exe Fatal Crash. One afternoon in July, in the northeastern United States, my family and I were outside enjoying the weather and slightly drinking. I've only had 2 beers and was on point with the others. I then noticed a bird in the sky that was standing still, not flapping its wings, no movements or variations in location to accommodate change in wind speed or direction. Its head wasn't moving around, not gaining or losing altitude. I don't think I can convey how motionless it was. It was just sitting there, frozen. Bird.exe has stopped working. I brought it to the attention of everyone else. We all stood there, looking at this bird, waiting for a sign that it was real. It took over 2 minutes of watching this bird and it finally moved, like it was no longer frozen in time, like nothing was ever weird in the first place. Whatever it was we witnessed, it was not normal. Something was at work. Something was different about that bird. Creepy file number 91, written by Fulcanelli, The Ghostly Meow. About 7 years ago, when I was in middle school, I often had to wait at the school for an hour or more because I couldn't ride the buses and had to wait to be picked up. To pass the time, I often spent my hour, or even longer in some cases, on the side of the school where I could watch a multitude of cars go by and sometimes see a stray cat roam around. I had always liked cats, and so did the man who lived next door to the school. One day, when I tried to pet one of the strays I found, the cat ran over to the man who lived next door. That was really the first time I was able to introduce myself, and where he could do the same. He told me he had seen me hanging around the edge of school quite a lot, and that he noticed that I wanted to pet some of the strays. He had told me that a lot of strays visited his home because he often left food out, and I was welcome to come over if I wanted to enjoy their company. I declined that day because it was pretty close to the time I was about to be picked up, and not to mention I had been warned to stay away from strangers. However, over the next few days, the man repeatedly asked me if I would like to come over. Being a child who loved animals, I couldn't refuse the prospect of playing with kittens over waiting in a parking lot. He led me to his back porch where there were quite a few cats coming and going, though some seemed a little afraid of my presence. I wanted to reach out and pet one as I was about to ask a question, but the man put a finger to his lips as he told me in a whisper, "They'll run away if you make any noise." I drew back a little and nodded as I just watched for a while. Eventually, a few of the braver, or possibly curious, cats ventured closer. I was even able to pet a few, and that soon became my afternoon ritual on the weekdays. However, when I was reaching my final days of middle school and about to advance to junior high school, the man asked me if I would still come by to see him and the cats. I told him that I wasn't really sure if my parents would let me, which gave him a rather stern expression. We didn't talk much after that, and any day afterwards when I came to play with the cats, he never came outside. On my final day of waiting on the middle school grounds, I knocked on the back door porch for the last time. I wanted to say goodbye at the very least. I didn't notice it at the time, but I didn't see any cats hanging around the porch this time. It wasn't the same man that I knew that answered the door. I could see similarities, but he was much younger. He looked a little confused, and I asked him about the older man who lived there. He told me that he was the only one who lived there, other than his father before him. I told him that was who I wanted to talk to, but he quickly informed me that his father hasn't been part of this world for at least 20 years. I asked him if he was joking, but he didn't find the whole situation very funny. Before he could tell me that I should leave, I excused myself. It was time for me to go anyway. Maybe it was best not to think about it. As years passed me by, I started to think that maybe I just imagined the whole thing out of boredom. A group of friendly cats was certainly more interesting than sitting in a parking lot, but that never explained why I never met the older man's son before. Eventually, I came to forget about it until my family decided to move out of our neighborhood. We moved somewhere a little closer to the high school I was currently going to, and it was just our luck that there was a cheap house available in the area. We moved into the home right next to the one where the old man had lived, which made me think about the whole situation all over again. My first few nights in the house were spent wrestling with thoughts about what was real and what wasn't, until each night my thoughts were broken by a faint meow of a sickly-sounding cat. Each night I heard it, I sat up in bed instantly and looked around. I never saw a thing but the empty space in my new room. I was almost convinced I was just imagining the whole thing. A few nights had passed where I never heard the sound of the cats again, finally letting me think in peace and try to drift off to sleep, and rest assured that everything was only taking place in my head. Until I finally heard the sound of a cat once more, this time closer than all the rest. I sat up a few moments after hearing it, thinking that there wasn't any chance that I'm just hearing things this time. When I sat up, my eyes instantly went to the corner of my bedroom. There was an old man with his back to me, kneeling over a small orange tabby. I didn't speak. I couldn't speak. I didn't know what to do until he turned his head to look at me. My widened eyes locked onto his before he placed a finger to his mouth. "They'll run away if you make any noise." Case file number 1114, written by Chilly Breeze, The Trail Guide's Time Loop. I was about 13 years old, away at summer Boy Scout camp. On this particular day, we were taking a trail ride on horseback, the first part of which started from camp. 15 minutes or so to pick up some supplies, then on for several more hours. Our guide, Carrie, told our group of 4, "Go ahead, I need to pack some more things. I'll catch up in a few minutes." We were experienced and pretty responsible for our age, so this wasn't a big deal. It should be noted that we were headed down a mountain. About 10 minutes later, we can see our next stop, and Carrie coming up the mountain towards us. She should have been catching up from behind. When she went to us, she said the exact same thing. "Go ahead, I need to pack some more things. I'll catch up in a few minutes." Then she rode off towards camp. We all gave each other a kind of what the fluck look, but being teenage boys, we were all too cool to admit we were confused by something. And Carrie was a good-looking woman in her 20s, so no way in hell were any of us going to admit to her that we didn't know what was going on. She did catch up with us later, never saying a word. If she was pranking us, I don't get it, and it would have been pretty dangerous for her to go off the trail in that area at a speed to get around us that quickly, just to come back up ahead of us. Still dumbfounds me to this day. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1115, written by Maria Computer, The Mystery of My Magic Bottle Opener. I have this really unique bottle opener. I've never seen anything like it before, and people are usually really thrown off when they use it for the first time because it's kind of unconventional and they're not used to it. But I love that bottle opener, and I'm always careful to consistently put it away in the same spot so I don't lose it. Just about a week ago, I dropped my chapstick in my car between the driver's seat and the middle console. I fumbled my hand around in there for a minute trying to find it, but instead, I pulled out my trusty bottle opener? Weird, I thought to myself. Maybe it fell out of my purse someday recently? I just couldn't imagine why it would ever be in my car, but I shrugged it off because, hey, at least I found it so I won't be totally screwed next time I try using it. I throw it in my purse and move on with my day. Didn't find the chapstick though. Rest in peace. Few hours later, I get home, prepare some food, and there's my bottle opener sitting nicely with the cutlery and silverware exactly where I always keep it. What the hell? I open my purse and yep, the other bottle opener is still there as well, exactly identical. I know for a fact I've only ever bought that one bottle opener before. I've never owned two at the same time, especially not for the same exact kind. I just assumed the thing duplicated itself or something. Whatever. Weird. Bonus file written by Through Again in Another Day, The Dark Secrets of Old Holt House. I was exploring inside Old Holt House, which was a derelict school building built in the late 1800s or early 1900s, I think. All the windows on the ground floor were boarded up. You had to go up an old fire escape and then climb in through a hole in the roof above the windows at the top of the fire escape to get in. Then you could access the rest of the building from inside. It smelled of damp, and a lot of the floor was rotten. There were old exercise books and papers scattered around the floor, graffiti on some of the walls. Lots of the furniture had been smashed up. It had 3 floors, and some hidden or mostly inaccessible rooms in the roof space, unless you wanted to crawl down access tunnels on hands and knees, which we did. That's how we knew they were there. I was with a couple of mates. They were in another room upstairs. I went down to the middle floor, and as I rounded a corner into an old classroom, I almost walked into a man with a big belly wearing a brown suit. I freaked out. How the hell did he get in there? There's no way he came in the way we did in a suit. I ran back around the corner and back up the stairs and shouted to my mates, "There's a guy in a suit down here." They all laughed and said, "What the fluck?" as if, and came to see. We went back to the room. Nothing. We searched the whole place as best we could. Nothing. Searching downstairs was impossible, really. We only had lighters, pre-mobile phone days. And a lot of the rooms were in complete darkness as they all had their windows boarded up. We never found the suit dude as he became known. I went in many other times and never saw him again. I still remember it vividly though. Super weird. The building was demolished a few years back after years of being derelict. Case file number 1116, written by Deducta. The Bill Murray Time Loop. I went to the movies years ago after a long day at work. I started watching the film, which seemed funny. It had Bill Murray in it, so good bet it would be funny. But I got tired and fell asleep. I woke up a bit later, still in the cinema, and the movie was still on. But I swear that I'd seen this part of the movie already. I tried to make sense of the film, but once again grew tired and fell asleep. I woke up a second time, and I crap you not, the exact same part of the film was playing. I looked around and other people didn't look like there was anything wrong with the film. I checked my watch and only about 40 minutes had passed, so I knew I hadn't slept right through the film. This was starting to freak me out. I closed my eyes to calm myself and counted to 20, but in the process I must have fallen asleep again because I woke up when everyone in the cinema was laughing at something, and guess what? It was the same fucking part of the film. I had enough at this stage. I got up and stormed out. I told everyone on the way out that this film was stupid and they were all stupid for watching it. I vowed to never watch a Bill Murray film again. Case file number 1117, written by JP 1119. Dear Cops and Fate. A few weeks ago, I'm driving back from my friend's house at around 3 a.m. He lives in the country, and one of my biggest fears is to hit a deer while driving. At night, especially being in a sedan and not a truck, could be an instant fatality. So I'm literally at a snail's pace, going around 30 on a 50-mile-per-hour road. It's 3 a.m., but I can see headlights in my rearview mirror in the distance. Crap, now I'm going to have to start going. About 2 minutes later, the car catches up to me. It's a cop. He pulls me over. Just wanted to check why I was going so slow. Obviously thought I was drunk. I just told him, "No sir, I'm just afraid of hitting any deer." Literally 5 seconds later, we hear a thump. We both turned around to see a family of 4 deer cross, and one of them ran right into the side of the cop car. Cop looks at me with this perplexed look, takes a look back at the deer, and then to me and says, "Good point, have a good night." Case file number 1118, written by White Llama. The Sicilian Nightmare. Well, when I was a kid on vacation in Sicily, and we lived in a house within a hotel area, not very important. In this house, me and my brother shared a big bed on the bottom floor, while my parents and sister shared a room upstairs. The bottom floor had the toilet. So I'm sleeping as per usual and wake up in the night quite cold, which was odd since, well, I had blankets and it was Sicily in the damn summer. It wasn't cold the other 13 nights we were there. I open my eyes and see my brother standing completely frozen in a sort of walking and opening the door to the bathroom motion. I kept watching him for a while, but he didn't move or anything, which was quite odd. That's the part where I decided to turn around in bed and notice that my brother is sleeping next to me. Let's just say I laid there in bed under those covers for quite a long time before eventually passing out of fatigue. Still the creepiest thing I've ever had happen to me in 27 years. Still remember it clearly even though it was 17 years ago. Probably some still dreaming thing or whatever, but it was and still is creepy to me. Bonus file written by Lampshade Express. The Hawk, the Chickadee, and the Unseen World. My dad passed away on Halloween. Very sudden and devastating loss for me. The day after he died, a chickadee flew in through the open door of my screened-in porch and just kinda hung around in there for a bit. My dad was a gardener and bird watcher, had binoculars, bird watching books, and bird feeders in the yard. He loved chickadees. I thought, wow, crazy weird coincidence. But being an agnostic, kinda atheist, I attributed it to coincidence. Then the day of the wake, I was on the porch with my fiancée and we heard a very loud boom and we both ducked for cover. I got up and realized that a hawk had flown right in through the metal screen on my porch and got stuck between the rail and the screen. He freed himself, flew over to the other side of the porch and kind of sat there breathing heavily, likely very scared for like 5 minutes. My neighbor came and coaxed him out. He left a hawk in flight shaped hole in the screen. You can see where his head and wings busted through. So weird. I've never seen a hawk in my neighborhood before. Another thing, a few nights ago I was laying in bed with my fiancé and suddenly I was overcome with a very strong, powerful scent of roses. Smelled like I shoved my face in a bouquet. My fiancé couldn't smell anything. My first thought was that it could be the flowers that I took from his casket to dry out. I had them hanging across the room. Got up, took a whiff. The flowers were almost totally dry and had no smell. Walking back over to my bed, I noticed a strong rose smell again. It was strongest in a specific spot right next to my bed. Smelled off for a few more minutes and it was gone. A few other weird things have happened too. I don't know what to make of all this. Case file number 1119, written by Angstronium, The Magic Deck Mystery. I shuffled the deck of cards back into order. The thing is, I now know how it happened. Well, way back then I was semi-obsessed with riffle shuffles. Those fancy ones where you separate the deck into two and run your thumb up each side so they interleave and then you arch this and they all go together nicely. I wanted to get really precise with them, so I practiced a lot. One day, I bought a new deck, split it and riffle shuffled it a whole bunch of times, at least 8 I'd say. Then, I idly ran a thumb up the deck just before I put it down, and every card was back in order. Something I already knew was impossible, or at least the odds were literally astronomical, being a number on the order of stars in the sky. It killed me for years. More recently, I found out why. If you riffle shuffle 2 exactly, the deck is split precisely into 2, and the interleave is exactly A and B. Then it is no longer a true shuffle, and it is possible to sort the cards back into order in as few as 8 moves. Think of a formal dance where you change partners. If a non-random system is kept to, then eventually every person will be back with their original partner. Bonus file written by Kukachua Rayam, The Curse of the Drumstick Tree. I live in South India. I still do, and this experience gives me nightmares. In India, as you may know, we're highly superstitious and religious. It was when I was 7 or 8 years old that my dad moved into a new rented home. My relatives were urging my dad to buy it, but my mom was reluctant, hence we never bought it, and I'm so grateful for that. I was a kid and I didn't know much about paranormal stuff. I faintly remember that we used to hang up a rectangular mirror in our hall, and one night, while I was passing that mirror, I saw my sister coming up behind me in the mirror. She was just 3 years old or so at the time, and I wanted to lift her up. So I turned back and was so excited to lift her when I noticed she wasn't there. So I ran back to Mom in the kitchen and asked where my sister was. She was like, "I put her to bed." I insisted that she woke up, so she took me to our bedroom since she and I use the same room, and she was sleeping as my mom told me. Later one night, I don't remember the date precisely. My dad had gone to work and it was 7 p.m. My mom was frying fish and I was having my dinner while watching Tom and Jerry when we sensed a burning smell coming out of the bedroom. My sister was with me at the time, so Mom rushed out to see and I followed behind. We noticed that our washing machine caught fire. We had kept our washing machine as that bathroom was huge and spacious. See, a few of you might think it's a washing machine error or some problem with the electricity. I remember my mom screaming at the brand manager of the washing machine saying that there was no electricity problem. So we got it checked too, and the serviceman told us that there was nothing wrong with the washing machine and it anonymously caught fire. So back to the story. The machine caught fire and it blasted. We ran out of the house and fire engines and ambulances started to pull up with a number of neighbors standing outside. Thankfully, with the grace of God, we got out safe. After a few years, since we moved to a new apartment, my mom was telling a very close neighbor about how our previous home got fired, and I was curious to listen, so I sat beside her as she told her experience. 4 or 5 days before the washing machine caught fire, my mom had bought some groceries and put it in the refrigerator. The next day, all the lemons and eggs specifically got rotten, and my mom had an ominous feeling about it, and then our house caught fire. Now, traveling back to when we recently moved into the house, my mom used to put incense sticks at the nook of the house. As you see, it wards out evil spirits and stuff. We had stairs which would take us to the rooftop, and my mom never goes up there to put incense sticks after the sun sets because one day it literally gave her the creeps while she went to place it there, and she came back running down. After we shifted, my dad used to go out of the country for business, so we were all alone. At that time, Mom would pray to God at night in the prayer room we had in our home. When she prayed, she'd hear someone walking and running on the rooftop, or sometimes a sense of feeling that someone walked or ran past the prayer room. We never felt happy in that house. We'd always find glass shatters at the backside of the home and had to call people to clear it out, and in the front of the house we used to have these drumstick trees that belonged to a neighbor of ours, and since I told you we are superstitious, 'tis said that a house isn't supposed to have drumsticks, as it's said that creatures of the dark used to reside there. This one applies to tamarind trees as well, and my mom thought that'd be a reason as well. We tried to talk about the history of the house to the owner, and the owner suspiciously tried to talk it away or change to other subjects, as if he knew. We also had a small temple adjacent to our home, which held Goddess Durga idol, which my mom says has protected us till the last minute we left the house. That Durga idol was stolen a week prior to the house fire. We lived in that house for a year or so, and Mom states that it was all the goddess who protected us and tried to warn us of that house. Now, I have heard that the house has been renovated to an apartment now. I hope people living there are alright. We never took a single belonging of ours from that house, as most of it was burnt away, including our picture frames, and we had to burn the remnants that we could collect. Still gave me creeps while writing this story. My dad told me he actually visited the house the next day after it caught fire, and he wasn't even able to enter inside as there was a strong, pungent smell left along with the burnt gas smell. So he had to ask professional people to retrieve our remnants back so we could burn it, and the walls of the house looked all black and gloomy. Case file number 1120, written by Infinite Window. The time I saw a giant bee and nobody believed me. Long story long, when I was in first grade, my eyesight was bad, but I didn't know. I thought trees had blurry color bundles instead of discrete leaves. One day, I wandered downstairs to the family room to watch Inspector Gadget. There was something I couldn't quite make out, sitting on the big blue sofa bed, so I walked closer to it. I had to put my head about a foot away to see it clearly. It was a giant bee, about the size of 2 of my fists. Now, think 12 by 8, about 30 centimeters by 20 centimeters. I figured it must be a stuffed bee, like the pound puppy my sister got as a birthday gift. But it wasn't cartoonish at all. Its eyes were multifaceted gems, its wings were iridescent, and that close up, I could see that the yellow and black colors were actually hair. And then it moved its legs and looked at me. I did not want to get stung by a bee with an equally gigantic stinger, so I ran upstairs and told Mama there was a big bee downstairs. We had problems with yellow jackets and wasps getting inside the family room before, so she went downstairs figuring it would be one of those. As I panted from my exertions, I heard water flowing through the pipes, so I figured she must have swatted it and flushed it. She returned and confirmed that she took care of it, and we never spoke of it again. Of course, she remembers none of this. She claims it was a dream or a childhood hallucination. Workerbee.dll had a memory leak and took up too much space in the heap. Case file number 1121, written by Alexander, the Very Fruity Glitch. My wife and I were ordering our groceries online. This is how we normally do it, as it's easier to receive a delivery than slog ourselves out to the bus every few days. We were doing our online grocery order, as always, but when we went to look at fresh fruit, for some reason all of the fresh food on the delivery app had jumped up to obscene prices. Now we live in Canada, a place where fresh fruit can actually cost upwards of $100 if ordering a lot of it. We live in Canada very close to the United States, so there was no reason for any sort of fluctuating prices on the application. We live in Canada right along the border again, so sourcing natural food products is never any issue to us. We were attempting to place a delivery order for our bi-weekly grocery store shopping trip shortly after myself and my fiancée moved to Kingston, where I work as a federal corrections officer for the federal state of the Canadian provinces. Suddenly, all of the fresh fruit and vegetables jumped to over $140 an order. Had we glitched realities? It was suddenly just 10 times more expensive. Pineapples, oranges, you name it. Case file number 1122, written by Donacia. The Magic Money, a tale of sudden wealth. Don't know if this is a glitch in the Matrix, a glitch in technology, or just good luck. Anyway, the universe has definitely been looking out for me. A month ago, I felt really weak with body pain and extreme fatigue. No cough or tough breathing, but knowing my body and the normal aches and pains and the normal tiredness, I knew that this feeling was quite different. I went ahead and took the COVID test and damn it, I was positive. Although I was a little bummed, I was kinda happy because I had 5 days off of work. Anyways, I had some money put away for a rainy day, so I felt like this was the perfect time to use it. However, I should have saved the money for when I got my check and was missing a whole week of pay. Well, I didn't think of that. I was so bored being at home, I managed to spend $1,500 on food and other random things. Whatever popped up as an ad on my phone and I thought it was cool. I ordered it. Also paid a couple bills and pretty soon it was back to work. Well, the check comes and it's a horrible disappointment after paying the rest of my bills and getting household stuff. I was left with only $20. Now here's where it gets weird. I have my money on a Cash App card. Anytime someone sends me money, the notification will pop up in the history and it'll show who it came from. I was getting down trying to figure out who I could borrow money from, but I decided to just go to sleep. I woke up the next day and was going to ask someone to send me money and noticed there was an extra $20 on it. Wait, what? So I checked the history, but no one sent me anything. Weird, I thought, but thanks, I spent it. The next day I woke up and it's like $25 more on the card. So I'm like, cool, infinite money. Then I'm like, something strange is going on. This went on every day, literally until I got my next check. I'd go to bed with one amount and wake up with a random more money on my card. I don't know how this was happening, but I'm glad it did. My sister told me that it may be money back from something I ordered. However, everything I ordered came and the money came off my card. There wasn't any errors. Plus, like I said, it gives you a notification of where the money comes from or goes to. However, this random money had no trace at all, it was just there, and I'm thankful for it again. Unfortunately, once my work checks got back to normal, I haven't gotten any extras. It was tailored to when I needed it. It was good while it lasted. Case notes are file 1113, the Bird.exe fatal crash. So I think people would attribute this, if told the story, that the bird was merely gliding in place as a balancing act of physical forces like the wind, the lift from the bird's wings, etc. But we're not the average person, we know better. As described, it bears no relation to a slow glide effect, which is well known in physics. No, this is a localized time pocket anomaly. People see it often for planes and other objects too, but generally things that are naturally flying. The bird, or those on a plane traveling through these anomalies, don't feel different, but they may notice that more time than usual has passed. The people on the plane, I'm speaking, the bird wouldn't care. What I find is most peculiar, however, is that instruments on board would keep track of time. On a plane, the GPS that planes use to navigate is literally a positional system that triangulates position by using time, the time to ping different satellites in space. If a localized distortion occurred, everyone would know. Even if it's a small amount of time, like say a minute, people would know because the GPS system would be out of whack. And I mean literally on radar too, you would see a plane stuck in place and then appear ahead. So the government would know about these anomalies, but it isn't being forthright about it. Which isn't exactly a surprise, but it does make you wonder. What things are they keeping from us? A lot, I imagine. All we can do is infer from different people's accounts, which is what we're doing here. Case notes for the creepy file number 91. The ghostly Meow. So the cat whisperer. Almost certainly a man passed away in the house you frequented so often, the old man, who had an affinity for the feline friends. But you asked the most intriguing question. If the old man wasn't there, it was just his son, Why did you never see the sun until that day? I don't think the cats were fictional or like conjures of your imagination. I think they were real. Maybe they were drawn to the spirit of the old man who was there, and maybe at the time that school was over, the younger man that was living there was still working or something. That's why you never saw him. Was always on the weekdays, right? So the old man was there in just spirit, and then his spirit drew the cats in, and that's what you were interacting with every day. And then when you told him that your parents wouldn't let you see him anymore, probably, well, he just got depressed, I guess, lonely, and vanished. Kinda creepy though, the way he came back to you in your bedroom. If you are a spirit for years and years, maybe eventually you kinda go crazy. Wonky. And now time for the quote of the day. Nothing like a lot of exercise to make you realize you'd rather be lazy and dead sooner. Randy K. Milholland. Yeah, when you're out there running or lifting heavy weights, you kinda get that impression that, this sucks. I'd rather not be doing this. But don't let that stop you. And at least for me, I'm lucky. I don't like cardio, but I love lifting weights. It's fun. You're always testing yourself and your limits. You're pushing it, and there's a numerical value to it. It's almost like a video game. I love that. Case notes for file 1114. The Trail Guide's Time Loop. Ah yes, the peer pressure of our teenage years. I'd always speak my mind, which would get me into trouble. Oops. And also I wasn't really popular. I was always like the outcast. I was homeschooled for 4 years of high school. The first year I was there, which in Canada is 5 years of high school. So yeah, the first year I was there and I would just do my own thing, and I was never really in a group. You know, there's always niches and cliques like jocks and nerds and all that, but I just was doing my own thing. I was the tree climber. For the glitch, it seems like you boys were caught in a time anomaly, so inside of it, time flowed faster, which meant that your instructor Carrie was at base camp earlier than when you encountered her in the real non-relative timeline. I think it's a good way to frame it. For most of our existence, time is absolute, and the relativity between us is essentially non-existent. Say there's the tiniest delay difference for, say, astronauts orbiting around Earth at 5 miles per second. In all other reference frames for us, my time is your time and your time is mine. There's no real difference. These localized pockets of bizarre world relative time really trip us up. I mean, entirely invisible, no sensation of crossing into one. You know, there is actually a hypothesis I came across suggesting that those who suffer from random vertigo, it's when their inner ears are caught between time distortions, the pocket of time distortion, and one ear is in it and the other ear isn't, and that slight variance causes vertigo. Even for a split second, you know, if a lot of these time anomalies are very small, maybe they only affect your part of your mind, and maybe the difference in time is very minute. Maybe inside the time anomaly, time is 0.7% faster or slower, but even a tiny anomaly like that would affect your sense of balance. It's a very interesting hypothesis, I think. I also think it's very cool that your summer camp was with horsebacks riding on a mountain trail. That's so cool. Like you were cast into a Red Dead Redemption game. Nice. Case notes are file 1115. The mystery of my magic bottle opener. So when unique items duplicate, there's no doubt of the glitch. If it happens to an ordinary item, say I got an extra plate in my cupboard, or I may never even realize. May just think, oh, do I already have another plate? Maybe not, you just brush it off. Or if socks go missing or cutlery. DOP and duplication events in many instances could be entirely unremarkable, unseen, and just forgotten. But when it's so unique, like a worn down remote or a particular bottle opener, it's almost as if a neon flashing sign from the universe is there. Accidental, yes, but bright as hell. Oh, and yeah, chapstick is a must. My lips get kinda rather dry if I don't use it after showering. Definitely recommended. Case notes for the bonus file. The Dark Secrets of Old Holt House. So that you went back several times after this. I mean, you're a braver soul than I am, or at least that I would have been as a teenager. Reminds me of the Gordon story, where a cable repairman was feeding cable through a wall of a very old building. A maintenance man appeared, a friendly chap, seemingly unaware that he was a ghost, or if aware, just lonely, and acting like we're still just a maintenance man there. Maybe a similar scenario here. Perhaps the man you saw with a gut and wearing a brown jumpsuit, perhaps he was a janitor of the school over a century ago. You said you almost walked into him. Well, more likely through him. You know, I wonder if the folklore of walking through spirits invoking a feeling of extreme cold is true. There aren't many accounts of that happening. At least I don't often hear it described like that. In fact, I can't remember a time where I did hear a few accounts of people saying the room got colder, but not walking through it, like just as a presence of the ghost. So maybe just like an aura around the spirit. And maybe it's not as extreme, so most people don't mention it. Maybe it's slightly colder, but not like you're in a deep freezer. And now time for the quote of the day. Every increased possession loads us with new wariness. John Ruskin. And this is part of why I'm a minimalist. I only buy what I need. And that's not to say that buying things is bad. It's just that if you overload yourself with material possessions, things you don't actually need, you clutter up your own environment, and that clutters up your mind and eventually reaches your soul. It's like trapping yourself with one of those ankle weights, with the cannonball on the side of it. The ball and chain, as it said. Be proud of what you have. If you have a lot of money, that's cool. But I would suggest keep it as money, maybe invest it, get gold and silver. That's cool. That's a material possession I like to have because it's shiny and valuable. But also, just get what you actually are going to use. And if you already have a lot of stuff, the best way to get rid of some of it is go through your possessions, and anything you haven't used for over a year, at least put it in storage. I mean, that is a good suggestion for people that have a lot of stuff that don't want to get rid of it, still own it. Get a storage, an off-site storage bin. You can rent those for pretty cheap. I think $100 a month or something, and you get a lot of space. So you can store a lot of stuff that you maybe will need once a decade. Maybe you'll never need it, but at least you have it there, and it'll free your local environment, which is, I think, a very good thing. Yeah. Case notes for file 1116. The Bill Murray time loop. Man, if you never saw Ghostbusters, Bill Murray stars as Peter Venkman, and it's one of the most classic perfection films to ever grace cinema. A freaky event this sure was, but don't knock Bill Murray. It's not his fault reality's all messed up. Damn time loops, huh? Was it a time loop though? The spatial anomaly would have to be so small and localized just around you, because it's a movie theater, presumably there's people around you. I'm not entirely convinced it was a time loop. Maybe it was your mind playing with buffered reality. In your tired and dazed mental state, you played future events multiple times. The subconscious dam opening up to funnel in information to the conscious that seems to cause and effect to break, ironically. That'd be my bet. It's all up in your brain because of the tired state. Case notes are file Deer, Cops, and Fate. So those deers were serious bros, making sure the cop didn't ticket you for going too slowly. Maybe saving the cop's life down the road too. It's no joke. Rural, winding roads, no visibility, not the time to be booking it at lightning speeds like most folks seem to be doing these days. Is it just me, or are drivers so much faster than in the 90s and early 2000s? I remember riding my bike around as a kid, like even before being a teenager, although this was in Canada still. I lived in many rural towns in Quebec, but over there, I mean, if you go there now, people are just booking it just the same as in any city in the US. Seems now, even in small residential streets, people are charging through like bats out of hell. It's very risky. I mean, I experience that all the time now, just walking the road on the street in front of my house for exercise. From one stop sign to the other and back, it's exactly 1 mile, which is cool. But yeah, it's a residential road. The speed limit is 25 miles an hour and most people go like 45. It's crazy. Case notes are file 1118. The Sicilian Nightmare. It could be that the between state, sleeping and waking, the mind isn't fully conscious, and it may even be related to whatever you were dreaming of. So when we dream, the conscious and subconscious link up more. Like I keep saying, the dam opens up a spillway or two, and very interesting, information flows in, although a lot of information from the conscious, events of that day, flow into the subconscious, so that intermingling creates interesting effect. It's like a droplet of blood diffusing in water slowly. Eventually it coalesces together, but it takes time, and until then, it's in extreme flux, creating all kinds of weird glitches by perception, like this. Case notes for the bonus file: the hawk, the chickadee, and the unseen world. I had never heard of a chickadee before. I looked it up and wow, what a beautiful type of bird. The black, saw the contrast between colors. This is a beautiful story though. Although melancholic in origin from your father passing away, I find agnostic thought interesting, or even atheistic. as I consider myself as a man who doesn't really know for certain what the meta layer of reality is. I do think there is one, as most hear me speaking about the simulation all the time. In a certain sense, if the simulation is by computers in another universe, or by God or gods, what we experience here is a sub-layer of total reality. And who knows how far up it can go? I mean, if we die, do we just go to heaven and that's it, the final layer? Or is there another reality where the simulation is being run? And maybe even that is a simulation too. It's just impossible to know right now, until we eventually move up. So that's why I don't discount these anomalies, even if they aren't easy to explain. I can't tell you the physics involved with spirits, but I can say that having read so many thousands of accounts, spirits are like ripples, imprints on the world of their form or soul, like fragments of it, I like to say. And I know your dad was positive just from the interaction and indeed strong appeal he has towards animals. Honestly, how can anyone trust someone to whom animals don't? And now time for the quote of the day. You can tell a lot about a fellow's character by his way of eating jelly beans. Ronald Reagan. This I just found like a funny quote. I'm not entirely sure what he meant, because I just eat jelly beans, like, just eat them, you know? Maybe like people who separate the colors and only eat specific colors or something like that. But I just dive in and just shove them in my mouth until they're all gone. Case notes are file 1119, The Magic Deck Mystery. So I just really love this little story, even if it's accidentally not a glitch. I've always wanted to be a magician, but after practicing for a while, I realized I'm nowhere near dexterous enough to be on a proper magician's level. Maybe if I gave it a 10,000 hours, but not really dexterous enough. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out Shin Lim on YouTube. Has to be the best sleight of hand magician I've ever seen, and I still don't understand how he does it. His Penn and Teller performance had my jaw on the floor, so definitely check it out. Case notes for the bonus file. The Curse of the Drumstick Tree. The detail of food turning rotten, yep. As clear a sign as there can be of malevolence, of willful decay, if you ask me. There's a reason decay is used so heavily in imagery in books, in movie scenes. It's the essence of death. Maybe not even in rage exactly or anger. It's just a force of death. And it's not exactly evil, as the word is used, too. It's not, so maybe malevolence doesn't fit either. It's just more a raw force. I don't think this has to be a spirit in of itself, but more of a presence, like electromagnetism or space-time itself. The Higgs boson, whatever, they're just natural forces, without consciousness to themselves. A rapid advancement of time, not through a space-time anomaly, but pure rotted force. Looking up what a drumstick tree, by the way, is, I've never heard of it before, the images don't evoke a sense of fear in me or anything like that, so if it's home to darkness, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would be. I wonder if the folk legend is true. How does it relate to something that doesn't look like it's evil at all? Maybe any kind of tree can play host to it. I know a lot of trees have spiders in them, so that's as close to pure evil as anything can be. Maybe it's not related to the tree itself being evil, but it's like a moth to a flame. It just attracts it for some reason. No matter the type, blue, white, orange, doesn't matter. And now time for the quote of the day. A positive attitude may not solve all your problems, but it will annoy enough people to make it worth the effort. Herm Albright. That's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Overwhelm and annoy people enough with my positivity and optimism that it's all worth it. I think it is. Hopefully it rubs off on people. We'll see. Case notes for file 1120. The time I saw a giant bee and nobody believed me. So I love how you described your poor vision as blurry color bundles. I'm nearsighted too, so I could understand the description. Without glasses, I can still see objects in the distance. You know, if there's a stoplight or a stop sign or a person or a car, I see it's there, but it's just in low resolution would be the best description. It's blurred out. I couldn't read from far away, but I know something is there. Same thing in class, you know, I could see the teacher was writing something on the chalkboard, but I didn't know what it was. So if we assume here that this wasn't a vivid dream of yours, that your mom really did go down, took care of it, it suggests that at least in this universe, the bee was normal-sized, but it did exist. So, did your mind glitch out in perception, somehow magnifying the perceived size of the bee? Might be that, because a bee, to my knowledge, couldn't be as large as described. Its wings wouldn't be able to generate enough lift to pick it up, because of the volume to mass ratio. If you make a bee 10 times larger in volume, its mass rises far more than a linear 10 times 2, which is why most bugs don't grow too large, which is very good. Thank you, physics, for that. And it's also one reason why dinosaurs are so fascinating. To be that large on land is very unique. Case notes are file 1121, the very fruity glitch. So I'm from Canada too, so I know fruit can be indeed very expensive there, but to me this sounds like a tech glitch, maybe? I see this on Walmart all the time these days here in North Carolina. Randomly high prices on common items, never on fruit though. If it is a glitch, I wonder what universe is seeing fruit prices that high. Is this a universe where there's like an apocalypse going on or some giant catastrophe where there's not enough fruit being grown? I hope if that's the case, then that universe is very far away. I don't want that to happen here. Things are already expensive enough. Damn inflation. Case file number 1122. The Magic Money. A Tale of Sudden Wealth. So the real oddity in the story is how the money wasn't traced. I don't use Cash App myself, but if it's anything like a normal bank or PayPal, which I do use, every single transaction, any move of money is fully traced. Like you mentioned, you should know who sent it, if a person really did send it. You know exactly where it went, even for the reason it's being sent. To have no track on where the money appeared from does strike me as more of a glitch than a tech issue. Still hard to say these days, technology is its own kind of wizardry. Often it feels more surreal than even the wildest of Matrix anomalies. In a certain context, that makes perfect sense. If we live in a simulation, it'd have to be insanely advanced, far more than our level of coding from all our gizmos and networks. So, we're just not to that level yet, but there's so many variables that it's hard to know. And now time for the quote of the day. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Soren Kierkegaard. I'm not sure I pronounced the last name correctly. It's that adage of learning from history, otherwise you're doomed to repeat it. Yes, we can only live forward, we can't go back in time, as far as we know. We can go forward in time faster, but we can't go back in time. So all we can do is look to the past, what's documented and what's true, and try to learn from it. Hard thing to do, because human action does repeat, especially on a larger scale. It's not repeating it, I forgot the quote. It's human action doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Something like that. Well, yeah, we don't necessarily repeat exactly the same mistakes, but it's close enough. So let's try to do better. We can learn from it. I believe in ourselves. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.